This week's game of the week is The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Yeah, it's wild. It is 2025, and somehow we are still talking about a game that came out 5 years ago. But yeah, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered launched for PC this week, and based off all the news we're hearing about Xbox and their next-gen consoles, it's probably coming to an Xbox console very soon. Yeah, this is kind of a weird one. I know a lot of people are going to be like, no, this is a 2020 game. This shouldn't be game of the week. Bryant, what are you doing? You lost your mind. I've lost my mind. I'm extremely tired. It's nearly midnight when we're filming this. But when you look at the games that launched this week, again, pull up the graphic. When you look at these games, it's hard to argue that The Last of Us Part 2 is not the game of the week. I was thinking maybe like we talked South of Midnight, but then I was looking at everything else launching next week, and I'm like, well, if we talk about South of Midnight this week, then we got nothing to talk about next week. So for those of you that are like, oh, you should have talked about South of Midnight, well, check out next week's show. We are talking about South of Midnight. And look, I also probably need to start this by saying I am extremely biased when it comes to the Last of Us series because I adore this game so much. I mean, I know there is a bunch of controversy surrounding The Last of Us Part 2 and a specific moment in the video game, but look, maybe it's because I'm 35 and I'm becoming an older gamer and I've just seen a lot of things, but I love when stories take risks. And I love when someone comes up to a tee and they just take the club and they swing as hard as they swing and they're just aiming for the hole and then they get a hole in one. I love when people take risks and people swing for the fences. And Last of Us Part 2, they definitely took some swings. And not all of them landed, right? This isn't the perfect game, but it's a good game, and I think it's a complicated game, which makes this super special. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's obviously my opinion of the controversy, but let's talk about the reviews for the PC version of Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Right now on Metacritic, the PC version of the game has an 88, and don't worry, journalistic credibility here. I did some digging here. I did some research. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PlayStation 5 received a 90, and then the original Last of Us Part 2 video game, without being remastered when it launched for the PlayStation 4, that received a 93. So if you're following along at home, Last of Us Part 2, peak Last of Us. Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, coming out on the PlayStation 5, still good, not the best. Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, launching for the PC, hey, it's still okay, but not as good as the original Last of Us Part 2. I don't know what's going on here. It's literally the same game, just with new modes and improved graphics. And it blows my mind that somehow on a console that's like a generation old, it got a higher score than it did on the current PC market. It's just wild to me. But anyway, let's dive into the actual reviews here. Game Rant gave the game a 9.6 out of 10. Gaming Trend gave it a 90 out of 100. Gaming Bible gave Last of Us Part 2 Remastered an 8 out of 10. PSX Brazil gave the game a 90 out of 10. PC Games, not to be confused with PC Gamer, PC Games gave it a 100 out of 100, and Gaming Bolt gave the game a 9 out of 10. Now again, The Last of Us Part 2 originally released back in 2020, but in case you've never heard of the game and this is your first time here, Last of Us Part 2 takes place immediately following the events of Last of Us Part 1, hence the title, but it picks up with Ellie and Joel as they are surviving with fellow survivors in Montana, unaware that the consequences of their actions from the first game are much closer than anyone is aware. And in Part 2, in my opinion, takes all the cool factors of like Last of Us Part 1 and expands upon it. I mean, the environments in the game are beautiful, the bigger, the infected are somehow more terrifying, and again, the thing that The Last of Us does so masterfully in video games is that like, it's a zombie video game, right? We should be terrified of the zombies. However, it's an apocalypse, right? And they somehow make human beings way more terrifying than the zombies in the video game. And look, I know there are plenty of gamers out there that are like, I played Last of Us Part 2 when it came out. Why are we remastering it? Because that game was pretty beautiful when it launched back in 2020, and I agree. But the remastered version does have some unique features with it. For example, let's talk about No Return. No Return is basically a brand new roguelike mode where you're basically surviving and you have to face these multiple different encounters. Ultimately, like, once you pass these encounters, you get this like boss encounter at the end of it, and when you complete it, you get this score, and then you rank yourself and you get points that you can use to like unlock new skins and camos. And each one of these challenges is different, right? So like you got like an assault challenge where you're fighting off waves of enemies as they approach you. There's another one called Holdout where you're basically defending one of your AI partners as there's enemies approaching you. And then you have Hunted, which I believe they just basically put like a timer at the top of the clock and they're like, survive. You've got to survive until the end. And again, No Return, super cool. I think that's a great addition to the game, especially when, there's no multiplayer here. Like Last of Us Part 1 had the great multiplayer mode, and we were all kind of hoping to see that with Last of Us Part 2, but we got No Return. And while it is no multiplayer, it is a fun little add-on for those of us who purchased the remastered version of the game. Now, Last of Us Part 2 Remastered also features a guitar free play mode. This was one of the cool side features about this video game, right? The first game, Ellie wants Joel to teach her how to play the guitar. During the time between the two games, Joel has taught Ellie how to use the guitar, and as she's going through the game, she finds like broken guitars or like sheet music and basically plays songs throughout the game. And now with this free play mode, you can basically sit there and strum whatever chords you want and play whatever music you want. And look, I'm not putting ideas out there, but if anybody would like to do this and hook it up to like the video game song from Tenacious D and just have Ellie be like, I don't play video games no more, never play video games, I'd love it. I'd love to see it. So please make that happen. But for PC players picking up The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, you will also benefit from quality of life improvements to textures and shadows in-game, along with other things like support for ultra-wide monitors, mouse and keyboard support, and of course, 3D audio. I'm just kidding. We don't have that here on the show. That was just a fake joke. Bad joke. As my daughter told me today, you're not funny. Stop making jokes. She's 3 years old and easily the most brutal YouTube commenter I've ever seen in my life. And look, and if you're someone who has never played The Last of Us Part 2, hearing those features, you're like, oh, cool. But look, all of that is included on the fact that you get to play The Last of Us Part 2. And again, I know that this game has a moment that is extremely controversial, but I still think it is one of the best PlayStation games of all time. And the fact that it is now available on PC outside of the Sony ecosystem, I think is very cool. But anyway, shout out to Naughty Dog, PlayStation, along with everyone else who worked on this game. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered for PC is this week's Game of the Week, and the PC versions of the game are available on Steam and the Epic Game Store right now.